Right, we'll just jump in, shall we? You ready? We all good? Alright, sweet. We're talking spring cleaning, because it is spring. As you can see, the sun's shining. It's actually quite warm today. I wore my big coat. Yesterday I didn't wear a big coat, got too cold. Today I did, got too hot. Classic spring issues. We're talking about spring cleaning. Obviously ad accounts, not your house or flat. We're talking messy ad accounts, broken links, forgotten ads, all those sort of things. I remember back in my day sort of doing an ad account refresh, removing wrong negative keywords and updating ad copy, finding like a hidden Christmas sale ad that's still live or something like that. Not the most glamorous work, but really important. And obviously we're using spring cleaning as a way to talk about these sort of things. So obviously it's important we do them more than once a year, but it's a good opportunity to talk about those sort of things. So got some notes here on some different topics that we can talk through, but jump in with whatever you think. We'll start with you, Luke. Email and CRM. What, let's say you've neglected, or a client has neglected their CRM database, their email setup for a bit too much time, and they want to use Spring as an opportunity to kind of tidy it up. Can you give a sort of basic introduction of where they should be looking or what you think they should be doing?
Yeah, I guess, probably the first, it would come under a few different areas. The first one would be probably the quality of the database. I think just assessing who's in it. If you've only looked at this once a year, and I think you caveated this right at the start, we talk about this as a spring clean, but really this is a lot of what we're talking about today is kind of like always on stuff, like you're doing it weekly, you're doing it monthly, quarterly. But obviously if you have neglected that, then spring is a great time to get it into action. But I think taking a stock of your database, seeing who's in it, see how effective they are. You might have run a load of competitions over the last 12 months and just got a load of rubbish in there. So I think it's a good time to take stock of how good that database is, run some new segments, really understand who's in it, and how good that database is. I think automations, I think is a key one. They're things that I think can easily get stale or old if you're not kind of regularly testing them or regularly updating creative or assets. You'll often find things that are broken in them if they're just left. Campaigns, I think, that probably more comes under the creative area. Like, is it time to give a bit of a facelift to some of your creative and do that sort of way? And then probably the final bit is just making sure you're planning ahead. Because I think the year is already shooting past. We're April next week. Just taking stock of what your plans are, what tests you're running, and lay a bit of a runway out for the rest of the year. Probably a bit of a snapshot, really, of what I do to clean things up.
No, that's good. I think to pick up on one thing you said there about tidying up the database. Often we may have been led to believe that getting the biggest database is the most important thing. Why are you laughing? Bigger isn't always better.
No.
Yeah, some people might think that you need the biggest database as you could hope for. Let's say you've got a really large database, but you find when doing some spring cleaning there's a lot of trash on there.
Yeah.
Do you remove them?
Yes, I think.
You just want the big numbers?
No, you definitely don't just want the database for the sake of it. And I think that a really quick segment, which is basically whatever platform you're using, they might call it different things, but you set a rule and you create an audience off the back of it. And that audience would be, has anyone opened an email in the last month, 30 days, if they purchased in the last 2 months, whatever those rules will be, that will then determine your engaged segment. Mm-hmm. You could have 1 million people on your database, but if you look at that segment and it's only 5% of people, then it's kind of irrelevant having this massive database. So what we tend to run as a really good best practice is what we call a sunset flow, which is essentially, as people become unengaged, we've got various different automations that are trying to get them back into the mix. You've obviously got your normal campaigns, even ads will come into the mix, that might draw people back to the website. But if we've given people 3 or 4 different opportunities, then we kind of sunset them, which they go into this flow, which again gives them another couple of chances to say, look, we really don't want to everyone's received these emails. Yeah. We really don't want to lose you. One last chance. But then if they get to the end of that sunset and they are still ghosts, we get rid of them. And I think that's just a way of, we're not just getting rid of people because they haven't engaged in a month. We're giving them every opportunity, but yeah, clear it out, because otherwise what's the point? It's just a vanity metric.
Yeah, we actually need to do that with our database. Cheska sent it all the other day. We're going to do that. We're going to pick up the unengaged people and do it. I didn't know it was called a sunset campaign, but that sounds nice. Yeah.
Some people call it very different. I think I can't credit who the client is. I can't remember who said it, but they gave it to us and that's a really good name. You're sunsetting people. You're sort of saying goodbye. But yeah, from a B2B perspective, I think it's a great example because people change jobs, people leave. Like I think cleaning up your database is a great. It's probably the best example of a spring clean, because it's like cleaning your drawers out, getting rid of all of that sort of stuff.
Okay, yeah, sweet. I'm struggling to think of a logical bridge into the next topic.
Yeah,
I wanted
it's
to
very
have.
different subject.
It's quite difficult, but the only one I thought is like Luke, you mentioned sort of like looking ahead, which is probably a slightly different take on this conversation. Often we talk about spring cleaning, we talk about looking backwards and tidying up things that have already happened. But in terms of using it as an opportunity to look ahead, it's probably also a good time of the year to look at budgets, forecasts, budget distribution, things like that across all of your accounts. Because also it's not something that you're going to be doing every week as well. So what have you got to add on that?
Yeah, no, it's a really good time to just have a sense check and think about what the year ahead looks like. You know, you've got a few months to think about how peak's going to look, what your budget plans are looking like. Looking at the past year as well, trying to figure out, you know, what has worked, what hasn't worked, what do you actually need to change this year. We actually see a lot of reports come out at this time of the year from a lot of our ad tech and measurement partners about the general landscape. So you can sort of synthesize what they're saying with your own data to try and understand the context around it. But yeah, I think stepping back and evaluating is really the key part here. And it's more than just sort of looking at your usual reporting. It's about taking all of your data sources, whether that's your standard MTA tool, but also any MMM studies you've done, any lift studies, and also attribution within the platforms as well. And just trying to build like a holistic view across your channel mix to see what's actually worked over the past year, and then how that will shape your strategy moving forward. A lot of clients are having their financial years end around this time as well, so it is always that difficult time where you have to speak to the finance teams, you have to speak to senior leadership and try and get those budgets signed off. So having all of your measurement data in a sort of nice coherent piece that can be understood by different stakeholders is absolutely key, because otherwise you might struggle to get, you know, signed off budgets that meet the growth targets for the next year and so on.
It's a good point about testing. I think that like we spend a lot of time talking about the testing plans that are rolled out and tests that we've run, but I think it's really important to take this time to take stock of all the tests that have been run, but actually use all of that insight to then start to form the plan going forward. So it's a good time to take stock of all of that at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, you know, if you want to test new channels in Q3 or Q4, we're currently doing this with one of our clients for a connected TV test. They've never done it before, so it's all very new to them. We're talking about that budget now because it's not an insignificant amount of money. It's a couple of $100,000. So we need to get that signed off now for September this year, and then they'll run that. They'll flight the campaign through September and October, and then they can capitalise on the gains from that over holiday season and Black Friday. So it is really about looking all the way over the last year and then thinking about all the way ahead of the next year as well. I think just to add as well, on final point, definitely summer is too late to start thinking about Q3 or Q4. You should be thinking about it now. If you're trying to get budget signed off for anything, the conversation should begin, you know, in April and May rather than in August and September, because, you know, a lot of clients start getting really busy, especially in retail from September onwards. So getting anything signed off at that short notice is a nightmare and it's risky.
It's a good point. People wait till like sort of Black Friday planning and bring it in August, September, which I think from a tactical perspective, would you say that's an okay time to start? But from a budget perspective, I mean, you make a good point. If you're going to be bringing new stuff to the table,
I
sooner
think
the better.
From a planning standpoint, if you're a typical retail client, September and October are usually a great time to capture full price sales. That's when autumn winter demand picks up. And then you've obviously got Black Friday, Cyber Monday to pick up discounted sales as well. So any major marketing initiatives, such as especially if it's like a brand awareness or consideration in terms of the funnel initiative, you want that going at full speed in September and October, because you'll get the benefit of the full price sales in those months, and then you can just trade in and capitalise on any pent up demand that was maybe a bit more price sensitive over Black Friday, Cyber Monday. If you start that stuff at the last minute, at the start of November, you're only just going to get a load of low value customers come through the door. And that planning for a few of our clients who tend to be the more organised ones is already sort of underway in terms of those initial conversations. And again, that ties back to the spring cleaning stuff that we've really been talking about here. It's because we've done the spring cleaning, or that's very much underway with the teams, and we've identified areas, which we'll get onto later in this discussion, with the channel mix. Where do we need to diversify? Where do we need to improve? We noticed that last year we didn't do connected TV, we didn't do enough awareness, and actually that hurt us a little bit over the Black Friday period because the brand growth stalled slightly compared to where it actually once was. So we now know that this year the initiative, based on the spring cleaning, based on the measurement stuff, is really to push them in that consideration and awareness funnel sort of stage of the channel mix.
Very good. So really, I like it. 'Cause when we, like I said before, it's sort of more looking ahead, isn't it? Building a roadmap for the future, looking ahead later on in the year. Now's a good time to be doing that, to get things up and running, test new channels. Where are we?
So this bit's the bridge. Yeah, fine.
I think it's an interesting part. I mean, there's loads more we can and we'll talk about from the channel perspective, but also I think from a sort of a ways of working, this is also a really good time to just assess how you do things. So if you're working with clients or if it's in-house, you're working with your teams, take this time, because we've kind of come off of the Q4 kind of chaos, Black Friday into Christmas into January. We're very quickly going into summer and beyond. So like this time's a really nice kind of period to go, are there any opportunities to change the way that we're doing our weekly reporting? Do we need to bring anything more in? Do we need to change the way that we do our calls, or even internal planning with the teams? Is it an opportunity to do more or less one-to-ones, or should we audit in each other's account? Do you know what I mean? So I think we spend a lot of time looking at how do we improve the ads accounts, how do we spring clean our CRM tech, all of this kind of things, but actually looking at ways of working, I think it's a really good time to do that now. We're doing it as an agency. We're going through client by client, where are the wins, where are the opportunities, what do we need to pull back on, change. I think no time like the present to kind of do that. That's a really good one.
Yeah, no, that is really good. It's similar to like a New Year's resolution. It's like at any point through the year you can say I'm gonna like lose weight or start running or whatever, but sometimes you just need a good time to do it, and now is a good time to do all those things you've just said. You mentioned having other people look at things with a fresh set of eyes. I think that's something that's really underrated, is that when we are so heavily involved in an account or accounts and you look at it every single day, sometimes you stop noticing things, isn't it? So like a practice we have is obviously having different people from different teams looking into your account and spotting things. Obviously when we're pitching for new work, we often look at other people's ad accounts, and you see things that we would improve. And that's a big thing for this time of year as well. So I guess one kind of conversation is, I don't want to it's not about just kind of talking shit about other people's accounts, but like, if you do look in a Google Ads account or a Meta Ads account, what are some of the big things that you see going wrong, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's one big part of this is just playing on the different skill sets that sit within different teams. Like we've got some people in the team who are very much experts on the US market, but then we've got other people on other clients who work heavily in the Middle Eastern markets, for example. But actually both the clients in both of those teams advertise in both of those markets. So maybe doing a bit of team knowledge transfer is really key at this time of year as well, because there's a lot of learnings and nuances to each market that can be shared between those two different team members. So that's something I've found really useful.
Yeah, and that is also the important thing there, is that's a big reason why clients should decide to work with an agency rather than building an in-house team, is because you get the knowledge across working with people who work across lots of different accounts. Whereas the downside of having an in-house team, and obviously there are upsides, we can't be completely biased, but the downside of having an in-house team is they only know about your account. They don't get that cross-channel, cross-account knowledge. So that's why we have to make sure we're giving that to our clients, because that's part of the reason they work with us.
Yeah, definitely. The context that you'll get from an agency team, I think, is hard to match in terms of the understanding of the wider marketplace. because we're working across multiple different clients who, always face different challenges, always capitalise on different opportunities. There's a huge amount of shared learnings and basically allowing, individual clients to see around corners because we've seen the challenge that they're about to come against with another client, for example.
Yeah. There was one good point I wanted to talk about looking at the direction of industries. Connor, you've raised that. Unless anyone else wants to jump in with anything, I think that's quite a cool conversation to have. You also mentioned earlier about like industry reports coming out and things like that. All of these things can happen throughout the year, but now is obviously a good time as any to sort of take a look at where the industries are going that you work in.
Yeah, definitely. I think digesting the industry reports and seeing how they relate to your strategy, your client, their business, what's worked well for them, what hasn't worked so well is absolutely key. A lot of those reports do come out around this time of year. So Klaviyo have just released their benchmark report. So we're actually currently now going through the process of indexing our clients' performance over the last 3 or 4 months against their benchmark report for this year. And again, their benchmark's not perfect, but it is really useful just to see the context that the account sits in, how it relates not just to industry peers, but also the top 10% in their vertical. And then similarly as well, another ad tech partner we work with, Marpipe, they've just released their state of catalogue ads report for this year as well. And it's, that's a very niche report focused on a very specific, channel within a platform itself. It's just for like meta dynamic ads essentially. But it does really help for our clients that invest heavily in that ad type because it helps us chart the priorities for the road ahead. And coming back to, talking about Q4 this year, it is far away at the moment, but actually, one recommendation for a client is that they need to film video products for all of their products to go on their PDPs. Now, that is a mammoth task for most clients. It's a lot of investment in terms of financial and human resource investment. We know this because we've read the report, we've seen it on some of our clients who do dynamic video ads currently. They're slowly replacing dynamic image ads and starting to perform better. So rather than having an image from a PDP pull through to your dynamic ad, you have a video from a PDP. And the most sophisticated advertisers are doing this, and the tests that we've run so far have been positive. So it's about having those conversations now based on those priorities, and then hopefully by Q4 we'll be in a much better place where some of those initiatives have started to gather pace and get implemented.
Yeah, wicked. We need to summarise those reports and share them with clients, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, the Business of Fashion report is about 300 pages, and I gave it a good stab. I reckon I did about 100.
Just reading it?
Yeah, just reading it. There's a lot of stuff in there is obviously not as relevant to the work that we do, but some of the stuff is extremely relevant to our clients and the industries they operate in. ChatGPT is actually very good at, you can give it the report as a PDF, provide it with the client that you want to look at, give them the context of their business, their audience, and some key insights, and it will go through the report and pull out those salient points. So that can actually save some time. But yeah, some of the reports are quite long. I've actually set the team some homework this week to read the Marpipe one, which I don't think is maybe very popular, but I think some people have read it already, which is good.
The video thing's really interesting though, because that's going to be quite difficult for smaller businesses, isn't it?
Yeah. It's not cheap either, obviously, and there's all sorts of other issues. You have to host those videos on your website. There's so many considerations outside of the ad channel. So that's why you need to have these conversations early, because clients then need to wrap their head around the implications of what you're asking them to do.
Yeah, no, that's it's a good opportunity as well to get on it early, I guess. We're getting through a lot of the points. Nice work. Anything you wanted to talk about?
Product feeds.
Yeah, I was going to sort of
try
say
to give you a break. But
That's my headache for this week.
I was going to say out of everything that we do, what if you were to leave everything, just literally just not touch anything, what gets dirty? If we use a spring cleaning thing, what gets the dirtiest the quickest?
Good question.
Does that make sense? I'm trying to use a weird analogy, but we completely left it.
What gets dusty quickest?
What gets dusty the quickest?
Yeah, I mean, never trust Google to spend your money efficiently over time with their AI products without a human, there to sort of place the guardrails in. I would say that product feeds are notorious for having issues that seem to creep up over time. This is especially true if your client is not using, say, a very popular and easy to use platform such as Shopify. The structured data that comes out of a platform like Shopify is usually significantly better than what you'd see from another website. I won't name any other website brands, but usually product feeds, if we ever audit like a new client's account, that's the one thing we see where it's like, wow, this is, there's a bit of an issue here, we need to sort this. And solving these issues is never usually that hard. We'd always recommend just working with like a feed management platform where we can get in, optimize the feed, make sure it aligns with best practices, and then give it out to Google and Meta and so on. But that would grow weeds very quickly, because over time the client would be adding new products to the website. Those products would be coming into the feed, they wouldn't be optimized. Some of the rules might break. AI might change this. We are testing AI for product feed optimization at the moment, but a lot of the tools that have come out are not amazing just yet. So yeah, that would grow weeds very quickly, I'd say.
Grow weeds, that's another good one.
Any thoughts from a CRM perspective on that question?
No, I guess what would grow to use what would grow the weeds the fastest. I think the database can very quickly get out of control if it's not managed. If you haven't got those things I mentioned in terms of like sunsetting people or understanding the quality of your audience, I think if left, you could very quickly just build a database full of rubbish people, especially if you wasn't assessing the routes into that database. So I don't know, for some of our retailers, Strava over the last 12 months has been a really great tactic to run kind of Strava competitions, Strava challenges, Strava badges in order to get people to sign up. And that's been a great way of influxing people into the database. When you assess it, actually the quality of those people coming in on the large part is good, right? So we're bringing great people in. On another client basis, we ran quite a broader competition which drove lots of sign-ups, but actually not a single sign-up has actually gone on and purchased a product. So you'd argue that not the most valuable customers. If you were running loads of those activities and you were just leaving them, you'd very quickly grow a database full of just random people. But again, your flows, automations, if they're left, again, the visuals can get outdated very quickly, especially if you're changing seasons. Some of the rules can easily get broken. I guess, across everything, if it's left, it will get dusty, right? That's probably the biggest theme. And I know I said that coming into this conversation around, we are going to frame it about spring cleaning, but I'm always going to kind of wince when we talk about that, mainly because these are things that do have to be kind of done. But if they are left, and you've only got one time a year to do it, now is the time to do it, right? But it does come with that big caveat of everything we talk about. There needs to be processes in place. Realistically, you can't do it daily, but processes in place to make sure these things are checked on a really regular basis. And in an ideal world, you wouldn't need a spring clean, which is what my wife would probably say about a house. If I stayed on top of things, wouldn't need to do a massive clean at some point.
It does get easier, yeah. If you do it regularly, it does get easier. You mentioned creative in email a little bit there, but I guess just broadly as well, creative in other channels, they'll quickly become quite outdated and fatigued, and I think users will just get bored of seeing the same ads, which is difficult when you have an ad that's performing really well, but over time you need to be updating that, don't you? You need to be keeping it fresh. Like, we all can think of brands that we just get hammered with the same ads all of the time, and if you've not purchased it the first time and you're not interested, that's probably not going to change, is it?
Yeah, I guess there's probably a few different sides to it. There's the industry changes really quickly. So what worked 6 months ago from a creative perspective may well be very different now. Yeah. That's obviously channel depending. Your brand is going to change, your audience is going to change. So I think you're right. We should be assessing assets and creative really regularly. If you're not in a cadence, or you don't have the ability to have fresh creative every fortnight, realistic every week, like having really fresh assets coming through that you're constantly testing. If you can't do that, then probably once a quarter, let's really take stock of what we're running, what's working, let's get some newness in, let's test it and do that. But that creative will sit across everything, right? It's not just the visual ads that you'd expect like Meta, but Same with your email automation, same with your email campaigns, just constantly bringing newness in. And obviously testing it and seeing whether it works.
Because before we would have sat here and said review your targeting on Meta specifically, we would have said, make sure you review your targeting groups and test new ones, and that's not really the case anymore, is it? It's like,
well, this is the grand industry debate. I see articles from some people. I'm a big follower of Mark Ritson and sort of what he has to say, and he said the whole targeting is dead thing is nonsense. But then especially when you get into the whole digital sphere, everyone's like, well, actually just remove targeting, it's pointless. So it's a really interesting debate that probably warrants a discussion another day there. But back to the creative point, I think we would usually, look at an account, and there's a formula that we have based on their current monthly average spend, based on their audience size, which, if they're looking at the UK market, it might be 10 million, but if they're looking at the US, it might be 30 million. And then we can calculate based on that spend relative to the audience exactly how many ads, roughly speaking, they would need to run per month to prevent that ad fatigue. Because, that can get cut out. Yeah, it is largely relevant to that spend and audience size. Obviously, if you've got really high spend and a fairly small audience, you're going to need a huge amount of newness. But on the flip side to that, if you've got low spend and a huge audience, you don't need a huge amount of newness. You could even look at like maybe quarterly ads. You'd obviously, sits aside from your standard A/B testing. You'd want to iterate your ads and versions of them over that quarter. But if we were working with a UK client and they were testing Meta ads in the US market, and they said, okay, our budget's £20,000 a month just to test the waters, they're not going to, especially if they've got a fairly mass market product, they're not going to need a huge amount of variety over the course of like spring, for example, in that creative, because they won't even touch the sides of that audience with that amount of spend. On the flip side to that, if we've got another client with a huge amount of spend in the US, we can see that their frequency is high, we can see their ad fatigue through the Meta rep. It's another metric they give you. If their ad fatigue is high, then we'd obviously recommend really increasing the cadence of that newness.
Very good stuff. Any other points anyone wanted to raise whilst we've got the time, whilst we've got the cameraman here?
I guess just some practical bits if people were doing a spring clean. So if you were to say to someone now, right, go and spring clean Google Ads account, like what should someone start looking at?
So definitely have a process. I mean, we obviously have checklists for basically every channel. I think the checklist part is absolutely key, especially if you're doing it across multiple accounts, because you wouldn't want to check something on one account and then miss it on the next, because you're just sort of going in ad hoc and looking at things. So doing it methodically, breaking it down by like account structuring, ads and landing pages, keywords or ads if it's on Meta. Look at conversion tracking, look at historic data, all as sort of siloed tasks, and then you'll slowly build a picture as to how they're all relating to each other. But yeah, be methodical, follow a process. It can be quite a boring process-driven exercise, but actually once you've done it, there's usually some useful insights that are yielded off the back of it. You don't have to document your findings. That can obviously be quite time-consuming. I would just go through it with a checklist and maybe tick things off in a cell on a spreadsheet. Simple stuff really.
Yeah, love a checklist.
Love a process.
Yeah. Alright, sweet. I might skip the quick fire questions because we're sort of nearly out of time, and I don't think we're going to get loads of value out of them because the conversation we've just had has been really valuable. It's been great to have Connor here to pick his brains, hopefully get him back for some more. Hopefully I haven't scared him off.
Get him involved.
Unless anyone else had anything else they want to share, get off their chest.
No, get your spring cleaning done. And probably, my biggest message would be, despite what this whole conversation has been about, try not just do a spring clean once a year. Stay on top of things, whether it's ads, whether it's your CRM account, whether it's the way you work with clients, the way you work with your teams. Just stay on top of it and just build a process, build tick sheets, build those kind of roadmaps of making sure that we're constantly reviewing everything.
And then you can't go wrong.
And you can't go wrong.
Alright, sweet. That's a good way to end then.